Added by Hogan's '53 record when he won the 3 majors, but he was still a great player and just the nicest man to work for. You know.
It's the caliber of the individual that you work for that you really appreciate later on.
Oh yeah,
you know that this is something special.
We tell stories about it later. His brother Herman, who was my age. He was the youngest of 3 boys, and Herman was a couple years older. The younger brother of Lou Worsham, his name was Buddy Worsham. He was a really good player, and my contemporary. And at a junior tournament, he went to the semifinals. And the next year, he became good friends with Arnold Palmer. Buddy Worsham, because Lou was Arnold's teacher. And they let him play at Oakmont and so on. And Lou and Herman worked with him. And they were roommates at Wake Forest the first year in '49. And so there's another tragic incident of coincidence of fate. Palmer was supposed to go to a dance with Buddy as roommate, and it's the last minute something happened. He backed out, a terrible accident, and everybody in the car was killed.
Yes.
Or he would have been in it, Palmer.
Wow.
So anyway, it ties up, and Lou was very instrumental in Palmer's career.
Now, how long were you in the Lauderdale area then? And where did you go from there?
Oh, 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
9 years. Well, I came here.
Right. Oh, that's where you came
directly.
from? Okay, that I did not know. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there for 10 seasons, actually 9 years, but and met some just tremendous players and played with. I probably, maybe the only person that ever played rounds of golf with 5 different U.S. Open champions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Great guy.
How were you introduced to Lakewood then?
I was doing all the work. I ran every tournament, did all the books, did all the teaching, and it was a it was a good job. I liked it, and but the compensation wasn't great. We got $5 a lesson, and so on. And now I had 3 kids, so I said, well, I've got to do something. And a fellow named Tom McGraw was a member at Lakewood. He was a left-hander. Was a guest of one of my people I worked with teaching, a member there, and we were over on the putting green, and he said, he chatted, and he said, how long have you been here? I told him. He said, and his host, we got along so well, and he says, yeah, I've been talking to Jerry about moving on, and he says, my club just lost their pro in Cleveland. Just like that. I said, where's that? He said, Lakewood Country Club. I didn't know where it was or anything about it. And he called. He said, are you interested? I said, oh yeah, yeah. This is '64. I said, I've got to do something. So I called. He called, and just coincidentally, Mike Manco. They had a group of 8 guys who made a trip down to Pompano Beach at Palm Air Country Club. They spent a week. Fred Kitchen and that bunch. Bill Miller was ex-president, and so on, and all pretty good players. And Mr. Sindelar gave me their number to call. Yeah. So I called him and made that arrangement to come up here to be interviewed. It was just a roundabout coincidental. I had not planned to, because you have to get, first of all, there has to be an announcement by the ex-pro that he is leaving. I mean, you can't make an application on a premise. So we confirmed that Carl Bembitel, who was a wonderful guy, he was the pro, 22 years, had suddenly decided to quit.
Yeah, what? Do you know why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the real reason, he told me later, was that they had just built this clubhouse in '62.
Right.
And the pro shop. And one of the members on the committee had decided that they were going to charge him rent for the concession of the pro shop. Yeah, and Carl said, "Well, I can't do that. That would be a precedent set for all the clubs if the word's going to get out."
Right.
And they wouldn't relent on it. And I've forgotten what it wasn't a whole lot of money, but but it was there as a principle. And he just said, and he had accumulated a little money, and over a period of time, they had no children, and he had some good stocks and things. So he said, "I quit," in a golf committee meeting.
Interesting.
In the fall, yeah. Or in the winter, actually. It's in January.
See, the principle of golf goes all the way through
Oh, yeah.
to that level of
Absolutely.
principles and ethics.
And they had wonderful fixtures. The pro shop was well appointed, and so on. Holzheimer's did all the decorating here and in the pro shop. So it was really a beautiful setup. And of course, we had no carts. We had 9 golf carts. Those old, what do they call them, West Coasters, chain driven. And they were all situated way over behind the caddy house.
Okay.
In a kind of a caged area. There's another story about that that's funnier than heck.
Sounds like a lion got in there. What's the story with that? A cage building for carts?
Well, we had a lot. We had a cage so that the caddies or anybody else couldn't get in and use them. You could self-start them. So the only use we had for a golf cart was for someone, which was kind of another funny story. A little later, that's why the caddy program was so key, and we had a lot of activity. We had a lot of play here. I mean, we had the most play of any private club in the whole Northern Ohio. By 1970. 5 years later, we were playing 36,000 rounds of golf here. Yeah, well, it was a popular course. Everybody wanted to play it, and there were a lot of guests and so on. But we by that time, we got a fleet of carts. But the first carts, there were 9 of those old carts, and by the 1966, we had our first Cleveland Open. And I had one of the keys to the carts, and the only other person who had the key was the manager. His name was Ed Valentine.
Okay.
And so as we got ready for the tournament, and there was a big jockeying around who's going to get caddy for Arnold Palmer and Lee, whoever, the big stars, and I said, the carts, of course, we had no pass. There was a fellow named George Lowe who was a real character in the golf world, and he was an extraordinary raconteur like Tillinghast was, and he says he was called the world's guest. He never paid for anything. That was his title. In fact, he was paid by Ramada Inns and Cadillac to drive a white Cadillac with a Ramada Inn logo and the world's guest. He'd stay at every Ramada Inn free. And he was well known with all the top pros and so on. He was a wonderful, funny guy. And so many stories about him. And so he was very close with Julius Boris. And he accompanied Julius here for the first practice round in '66. Now, we were in the middle of a drought in August of '66. We had no watering system. And so Julius wanted to play a practice round on Monday, so we did. Well, real quickly, in sitting in the pro shop around 10 o'clock that morning, and guys were coming around, and Julius was going to sleep right at 10 o'clock. That's how laconic he was. And he said, "Well, what time are we playing?" I said, "We're going to play at 12:30 after lunch." And they'd fixed a nice little buffet in the pub. And so we played a practice round and played another practice round the next day. And the Wednesday Pro-Am, Dr. Fentz was the medical director of the tournament. Tom Ferry was the general chairman and president of the club.
Right.
And wonderful guy. And he says, Dr. Fence had the only other key. He got the key from Ed Valentine for the carts. I had the other one on my keychain. And George Lowe says, he said, are you going to watch the pros play? He said, I don't want to watch those jerks play. I mean, I've seen them all their life. They're all a bunch of jerks, these pros. He was just called them all kinds of vile names. He could get away with it. He was that vicious. And a lot of times he was right. But he said, so that he was staying at, there was only one Ramada Inn around here someplace. I can't remember where. But so that morning of the first day, they walked in the shop. Now, I knew him from Florida because he hung out at Coral Ridge, as well as a lot of the Yankee players. You know, they had just established their training camp there in Fort Lauderdale the year before. So he was vicious, and he said, "Here, Pro," he says, "you gotta have a bank account around here someplace." He says, "Run down. I'm running short of cash." He said, "I'm real light. Run get this check cash for me." And I looked at the check. It was $5,000. That was 1966.
Wow.
I said, "It made out to cash." I said, "Oh no, I don't have that much in the bank." And so he said, "You'll make arrangements." That's the way he was. He said. So I called the manager, a little young guy I knew, and he asked me who was the maker. And the fact is, I knew who wrote the check, and it was good.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he was a member at Coral Ridge. It was a gambling debt. He was a wonderful gambler, George. That's how he existed, gambling on golf and other things, horses. The guy owned the racetrack in Pittsburgh. His name was Hugh Grant II. So, and it was good. So I went down and got him all $100 bills.
$5,000.
And he drank nothing but Carling's Black Label.
Local.
Yeah. But the club didn't carry that brand, you know. And there was a little bartender named Jimmy Whitehouse who happened to be, I said, "Jimmy, Mr. Lowe likes to have a few after the round, after he watches this, and we need to get some Black Label." He said, we don't carry that. Our manager doesn't like that company. And we got through with that Monday afternoon, and he was sitting in the grill room in the corner, George Lowe, with 3 Carling Black Labels on the table, and it was the whole beer chest was already stocked with Carling's Black Label. Nobody knows how it got there or who paid for it to this day.
It was there though.
So the first day of the tournament, this was a big deal. We had the most people that attended a tournament in the history of Cleveland on that first day.
Wow.
In '66. We had over 30,000 people here on the grounds, more than they had at the U.S. Open the week before.
Oh, that's incredible.
They were parked all the way up to Center Ridge and all the way back down past Detroit, and the locals would rent their lawns out.
Sure.
You know. But anyway.
But would people park on the street along Bradley?
No, they were not allowed to do that.
Okay.
There wasn't enough room.
Right.
And so the president of the club called me about, Julia started at around 1 o'clock, and about 1:30 he called me frantically. We had just installed a phone system for the television. It was the first national televised by transaxial cable.
Mm-hmm.
They put a phone line in at number 4 at the corner
Mm-hmm.
by the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
and on number 15, and so on. At 3 points, and the president was standing at the phone. He says, "I'm looking out over here, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. I see a guy driving a golf cart in the middle of number 2 fairway. Who the hell is that? Get out there and do something about it." It was Tom Ferry, and he says, "Who is that guy?" Well, I knew it was George Lowe. To this day, no one knows how he got that cart. I said, "I've got the only other key, and Dr. Fence has got his cart parked by the trailer, the medical trailer." Nobody knows how he got access to that cart. He said, "You think I'm going to walk and watch these chumps play golf?" So I went over to number 2 green. I said, "George, this ain't going to work. You're going to get me in trouble here." So he said, "Take off."
Jump started it somehow, the first attempt of a
He
cart.
somehow got access. He knew how to do it. I don't know how he got into the cage, first of all, because there was a lock.
Right.
But he could do it. He could do things. But it was funny because he said, "I can only watch one day, and I can't stand more than one day of these jerks playing golf." So he left. He said, "But I will make a bet on Boris."
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
He finished 3rd. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So you were brand new here then, basically. You'd come in '64.
But yeah, that was the second year, '66. Yeah. We had the second one in '68.
How did that happen, Jerry? Was there a rotation amongst the Cleveland clubs, or how did the club get to host the Open?
Well, there was a deal with the PGA. The PGA of America owned all the rights to these various tournaments on the schedule, and I think they got a 10% override or something, and they approached the club in winter of or fall of '65, my first year, and they asked me to go in. The board come in. And a bunch of local businessmen, Frank Nero's, Mercury, and all those people, and a lot of sponsors, a lot of local sponsors, of course, Higbee's and all those department stores. But the fact that the committee did not, and to this day, no one knows why they accepted the tournament, except for the prestige. We didn't get a dime out of it. The club did not get a dime out of letting them use this course for a week. Yeah.
That's why maybe there was such an uproar.
Oh, yeah. It was a terrible, terrible reaction.
Yeah.
And so then when they approached the next time, the '67 for the '68 tournament, Bob Oakley was involved, and he was violently opposed to it. And Sal Marino was vice president. He's going to be president the next year, I think. And Sid Corporal was the ex-president, wonderful guy, and he said, "Well, no, we're not going to have another." It was such a success. It went over so well with the public and the media, and the pros. In fact, Chuck has a plaque in his office, a tribute to his expertise and how wonderful. All the pros signed it. Big post. It's wonderful, and he said, "No, we're not going to have this unless we get $50,000 up front, okay, and a percentage of the concessions." Now there was a Jewish fellow, I can't think of his name now, who had all the concessions of all these tournaments in Northern Ohio. So they had to deal with him. He didn't like that at all, of course. But it was it worked out. We netted out about 70 or 75,000. You know, for that week. That was a big help for the budget. And it was just a tremendous tournament following the U.S. Open that year in late June. And everybody saying, "Well, why would they have that tournament at Lakewood? Those pros tore that course up. It's such an easy course." Well, it was a drought. You know, it played so short, so easy for them. We were victims of the weather, actually. So when we met in the winter of '67 or '68 before that, and so Chuck Lott was instrumental in that. He said, "We'll show those pros. We'll see if this is easy." Yeah.
Set it up.
Only 3 players broke par in '68.
Is that right? Is this where